Hi, friends. This is Wendy Harrop, and welcome to the Say Yes to Yourself podcast. On the Say Yes to Yourself podcast, you'll hear stories from women just like us who are adding the practice of saying yes in their daily lives in big and small ways, and as a result, are experiencing the truth that everybody wins when you say yes to yourself. Saying yes to yourself is a graceful unfolding, an intentional becoming of the very best version of you. It is my hope that in these conversations, we are able to find our truth and be inspired and empowered to live our very best lives. I'm so excited to go on this journey with you, and I look forward to finding a bit of our own story in each other's. Hello, beautiful friends. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm just delighted that you are here. I hope you had a fantastic Valentine's Day weekend. I hope you are just basking in love this whole entire month. Well, obviously, I want that for your whole entire life, but it feels so intentional at this time to focus on love, and it's so good for us to do that. In fact, love has been the theme of our Say Yes Summit. We started yesterday, we continue today. It's been so good. Oh my gosh, if you did not sign up and now you're so sad that you didn't, it's okay. You can sign up. You will get the replays from yesterday and you can join live today. Or if you need to watch the replay of that as well, you're welcome to do that. But if you're live, you'll get to be a part of these gorgeous conversations with the Total Summit has 8 of our former podcast guests together having gorgeous, expansive conversations, time for Q&A. It's just such beautiful energy. Our theme is love. It's all good. It's so, so good. And if you have been thinking about joining the Say Yes Sisterhood, you can use your $47 from the Say Yes Summit toward your first month of the sisterhood. And then, of course, you'll get all the future summits included as a member of the Say Yes Sisterhood. So many good things. Also, if you've been thinking about joining the Say Yes Sisterhood, we have a very special members only Paris retreat in September. So that's also very exciting. I've got all sorts of value adds that make you want to say yes to yourself and get into that membership. It is a beautiful, beautiful experience. We have weekly calls. We have this great community of women that are cheering each other on toward our next yes. It's just beautiful and expansive and fabulous. And I would have to say that my trajectory this last 5 years has been successful because of implementing a morning routine, as I tell you all the time, and intentionally curating the community that I desire. And that's exactly what the sisterhood does as well, because I have great ideas and I have big dreams in my heart, and not everybody is on board with them or as excited about them as I am when I'm out in the real world, or the world. I would say my world is the real one with capital R. And so it's really great to have this community of people that can be encouraging. We remind each other of our power and not to give that away. You know, nobody can take anything from us without our consent. So anyway, that's a whole nother show. You can come get more of that in the sisterhood or join us today for the Say Yes Summit. All the links to all those things are in the show notes, as well as all the links to get in touch with today's guest, Lisa DeAngelis. Oh my word, what a beautiful soul. I loved this conversation so much. I'm so excited to share it with you. but I'll tell you a little bit about her first. Lisa DeAngelis is a holistic change practitioner. She's an author, teacher, and speaker. She is passionate about building meaningful relationships and helping others live authentically. See, we love her. Her debut book, Embracing the Unknown, Exploring the Pathways to Change, offers research, wisdom, and aspirational stories that will empower and support others in learning to navigate change in their own lives. Lisa's unfolding journey has established her commitment to living with intention and purpose and helping others walk through the meaningful intersections of their lives. She is an avid traveler, a singer, lover of the arts, and she lives and works in New York City. Don't we love her so much? I cannot wait to share this beautiful conversation with you. Please enjoy Lisa DeAngelis. Lisa, I am so delighted to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Gosh, it's a beautiful day. I'm here in New York City, and it just has a special energy around this conversation already. So I'm just really excited to dive in and see where we go.
Oh, me too. So let's start with the question I ask all my guests, and that is, how are you saying yes to yourself in this season?
Mm, it's such a great question, and
Thank you.
part of me feels like I could go in so many directions with this answer, but I
We
think
have nothing but time.
I think what I'm going to start with is I am saying yes to myself by letting me be fully human. And I know that might sound silly because we're walking around as human beings, but maybe you've heard this little question, are you a human being or a human doing?
Ooh.
And it's the being fully human part that I think is the piece I'm saying yes to, which means I'm living in this full spectrum, saying yes to leaving space for things, to recognize what my body is asking for in any given moment, letting go of the coulda, shoulda, wouldas of the world to say, no one else knows what I need except me, and
Mm.
really honoring the fact that, like all the seasons, it's going to change. And so this commitment to sort of the beingness of what it means to live in this full spectrum of being a human is really, I'm really diving into the yes of that.
Oh my gosh, I love everything about that. I love this conversation already. Thank you so much. I wish we were on a really long flight
I
so
know.
that we could talk for several hours about unpacking this, but I love the intention behind everything that you said. And I love how those words resonate and how they're inspiring as well. And they feel like an exhale and a hug, and also a catalyst to go almost do more, like just the pause of intention and presence almost fills my cup to a
Mm,
point that I want to take inspired action. And I think there's also a ton of conditioning in there that says, oh my gosh, that's so nice. I've read my affirmation. Now let me go kill it all day long and hustle. And and then if I feel tired, I'm just going to listen to another motivational quote or maybe even meditate and springboard. And I think that we can get into this trap of using the right words, but just kind of
mm.
spinning a more positive aspect to the same behavior that drew us to the positive words.
Mm. You bring up such an important point because we are living in a time and a space where access to the intention is all over. I mean, you
Right.
can't really ignore it, right? Anyone who has been in a space for, I'm not somebody who believes in coincidence, right? I
Correct.
think there are echoes in the universe, things I need to hear multiple times, things I didn't quite
Yes.
catch round one, right? I always laugh when it's sort of saying, everybody says like, this isn't my first rodeo, but two is a really low number of rodeos, two
For sure.
or something. So I joke, like, we should not have it on our second rodeo, right? Like, this
Right.
this is really an opportunity. And at the same time that intention is everywhere, so is this concept of potential. And
Right.
potential is sort of unlimited, right? Potential is everywhere. And if we allow it, it's sort of, but what happens? How do we take that potential and plant it like a seed?
Mm,
So that it knows how to grow, it knows how to just stretch itself inside us, and then eventually we bloom. We bloom through that potential because potential itself isn't going to do it. The intention itself isn't going to do it. But there is a space, I think, to use that as the inspiration, which becomes a really, really juicy opportunity when we do
absolutely. Oh my
that.
goodness. And you are in the right room as far as just we are all speaking this language. And additionally, I'm a flower farmer. So
Oh my
right? Like
gosh.
I get that, even when we first moved from California to Massachusetts and we had now property and a farm and the
Mm.
possibilities are endless and we grew so many things, and there's just because you can, just because you have space, just because all of the climate conditions say that this is available to you. What I found was, although I loved going to the garden and harvesting whatever I wanted for dinner, and that was dreamy, but
Mhm.
oh my word, there was so much more than what we needed for dinner. And then as I continued day after day of harvesting, 5 to 8 pounds of green beans every day for 3 weeks, I'm now just mad at produce. And I can't, and I just went through this pendulum of, and also life circumstances changed. My ex-husband was the produce planter. And
Mhm.
then I became responsible. Once it got in the ground, it became my responsibility to harvest and cook it and all of those things. And so when I needed to reset after he was no longer planting any of those things, just reevaluate for myself, do I want to spend all summer mad at produce, or do I want to grow something that delights me, that is in alignment with what is in my heart to enjoy as far as the process, but to also not be overwhelmed when it's time to harvest? How does planting dahlias and continuing to grow peonies, they have distinct seasons. I've narrowed down the scope of what I'm doing and increased the quantity of those two things. And now I have this amazing
Mm,
harvest that
mm.
is in alignment with what I'm doing as a human and what I'm being as a human.
Yeah,
And
with your
yeah.
desires and your evolution, which is so beautiful. When you were speaking about that, it reminds me of this line that I've heard, and the wounding is not our fault, but the healing
Mm.
is our responsibility.
Oh my
And it's
gosh. Okay, wait, say
easy.
that again, please.
Yeah, yeah. The wounding is not our fault, but the healing is our responsibility. And when you were just talking about your ex-husband being the one who did the planting and then you're there having to deal with the harvest of that, I just thought this is the perfect microcosm for what the world we exist in. And there is difficulty in that acknowledgement, right? Like yeah, we all have wounding. We all have places where we end up with something where we go, what in the world do I do with this now? But I think that is where there's such beauty to dive into. And I have to be honest with you, I am not a gardener. And this is not the most natural. I mean, I'm actually keeping plants alive is a very difficult thing for me. I have a hilarious story about when I moved to New York City during the pandemic. I have a really, really good friend of mine. She sent me this beautiful big house plant. And I my instant reaction was panic because I thought, oh my gosh, I can't keep it alive. And of course, the directions on the card say hard to kill. Right. And I thought,
Oh,
well, okay, of all of the things, and I called her and I said, what were you thinking? I said, I'm not going to be able to keep this alive. And she said, I trust you. I know you. I see you. This is a stretch for you, but this is representative of where you are and what I know you're capable of, right? And it was this beautiful moment. I really have had so many moments of getting mad at the plants, right? Why are you
mhm.
dying? I'm giving you water. I'm putting you in the windowsill by the sun. What is the problem? But I was sort of making the cardinal mistake that I've seen myself make in other areas of my life, which was blaming the plant.
Mm.
Really, I wasn't looking at the environment that I was giving it, including what I was offering it myself as a part of my ecosystem, right? And I think that is something that I really had to take a couple steps back from and say, huh, where do I need to take what I've been given and use it? Use it for myself, use it as an opportunity to keep me growing, not as some sort of a burden that's going to hold me back. And if I do reach the point where it no longer serves me, that's the moment to, bless it and release it. Let it go.
Totally.
Have these
Course
moments to
correct.
say, thanks for being here. Yes, the course correction, but I'm ready for something new. I'm ready to step into a different space.
Oh my gosh, I'm loving every second of this. Now I'm super sad we're not on a long airplane ride. Okay, so I hear you in the houseplants also. Just so you know, things that grow outside are 1,000 times easier than because it's a plant, right? And anyway, it just has everything it needs built in out there. So
Totally. Totally.
I am very adverse. Please do not give me a house plant. Any listener, do not bring me flowers. I'm full. Do not, I don't need anything else that is relying on me to keep it alive.
Mhm.
Like I don't want a sourdough starter. I don't want anything. So, and to your point of the environment, there's also different needs for everything that's growing, just like us. We can't just, the answer isn't always more water and more sun.
And that's the trick is I
Yeah.
think I've spent so long looking for the answers outside of myself, looking
Mhm.
for someone else's opinion, guidance, input, whatever that might mean, the tools, the resources that I don't have. When in reality, a lot of my discoveries have been that it's not that I don't have the tools. They're just not the resources that are automatic recall. They're not the ones that are right there yet. And they might just need to be strengthened. No different than strengthening other muscles, right? We work out our bodies to keep
Mhm.
our muscles strong. Sometimes we need to do it in a really targeted way. Sometimes we just generally need to keep ourselves moving. And regardless, we discover that these things are there. They just need to sort of be uncovered a little bit more. And
Right?
then that becomes really exciting because we do have the resources inside us. We
Mhm.
do have the tools available to us. And I do truly believe, I'm not just saying this because it's the name of your podcast. I do think this idea of saying yes, giving ourselves permission is
Mhm.
one of the core skills that we can strengthen in supporting us in whatever ways we want to move forward. And it
That's
might
right.
mean we're in a phase of our life where there is no more added, right? We are full and we
Totally.
are ready to just really work with what we have available to us. And we might be in that really creative, generative phase where we want the starter and we want to plant new seeds and we want to do that. Either
Yes.
way, this act of giving permission, taking permission, grabbing hold of what it means to say yes and
Mhm.
allow that to move you is such an extraordinary space to explore.
Oh, I could not agree more. Thank you for that. And I think that, although for me, the answer is always yes. It's my favorite word. I love it. But what I am noticing is that I get to manage the questions. So
Mm.
I don't have to, I have to play games with myself all the time as far as like, so that it just is, it's helpful for me. I am simple in that way. A quick study, for example, I spent 24 Mother's Days
Mm,
childless
mm,
and it sucked. And that holiday keeps coming regardless of your status. And so the game that I played with myself was when somebody wished me happy Mother's Day, I just pretend that they said happy birthday
Mm.
and would say, "Oh my gosh, thank you," because my birthday is not till June. So it would
Mhm,
be
mhm.
surprising to be wished a happy birthday instead of wanting to scratch their eyes out and, the poor checker at the grocery store who doesn't know better.
Sure.
But at the same time, I can give myself permission to still say yes, which feels good to me, but manage the questions,
Mm,
manage the intake, manage what those requests are looking like for a particular season. We mentioned planting seeds, and oftentimes we are thinking in the realm of spring and autumn. Like we're
mhm,
planting seeds and we're harvesting, and we're planting and we're harvesting, and we're planting and we're harvesting. And there is so much growth that comes all summer long. And then there's so much rest that's required between harvest and planting again. And that can feel like a challenge. It can feel like, no, I want to go after it. I want to do things. Rest is for the night. Like that's what 2 a.m. is for. And I think that it's really important to just pause and redefine how rest is a giant yes for a
mhm.
portion of of this season.
That's great. And I think for me, that comes back to another one of these skills, tools, resources like permission, right? Perspective.
Mhm.
It might feel in any given moment that we, and I'm using air quotes here, so I have to
Yes.
say that, can't afford to take a few moments of rest
Right.
or right. But really, if we blow ourselves out a little way, we zoom out to this perspective where all of a sudden we can see that in the grand scheme of things, all we're doing is giving ourselves the opportunity to build resource, to build
Mhm.
our internal capacity to handle more when it comes along. And yes, it's not that rest is something that is optional, it's actually a necessary
Right.
part of the cycle,
Right.
right? And I think that's what people sometimes forget about change is it's not all action. There is actually mostly for me in this cycle of what it means to change, most of the steps are about reassessing,
Mhm.
reorienting yourself, looking at what's happening and actually garnering the learnings,
Yes.
non-judgmentally, of course, because if we're
Totally.
going to flip into a judgment space, that undoes a lot
Right.
of our ability to keep moving forward. But there is so much important that's about those pieces of the cycle of change because it allows us then to choose direction that ends up happening faster and smoother and in a way that really serves us.
Absolutely.
And that is really important. So I'm so glad you brought up this concept of rest. And I am the first to admit I nap regularly. There are days when I absolutely, I mean, I'm a total fan and I rest is so important to me, but I have really developed a different relationship with it
Mhm.
because there are tons of moments in my life where I've thought, you can't afford that. And that just was not a truth. That is a reality.
Absolutely. And there is so much action in rest.
Yes.
It's restoration. It's just not our action. It's, infinite intelligence at work in our bodies that is allowing for pause, for energy restoration, for all the things we need to do what is next in our heart. When I say do, and when we're saying action, and it's not in this bulldozing our way through, it is just riddled with intention and presence. And we are always moving forward. Even when we're feeling stuck, there's always momentum. We are just maybe recreating the same thing over and over. And that's why it feels like we're stuck, but we are always moving forward. And so we
Mm.
get this opportunity to do it intentionally, to be present, to be continually asking, how, I ask on this podcast, how are you saying yes in this season? Because most times I'm speaking with someone that I've either not spoken with ever before, or someone that I don't talk to regularly. But with myself, I'm asking all the time. I just ask the universe, I ask God, how would you have me use this day? How would you have me use this next 15 minutes? If I have a gap in my schedule, whether it's podcast interviews or I've just mowed the lawns, but it's not time for school pickup yet. I just am asking this question, and there is, in the pausing of the ask, there's rest. And then in the answer to that question, there is action, but it's inspired action. And that accomplishes immeasurably more than what my blind action accomplishes.
I love that difference, inspired versus blind action. And let's be real, this is countercultural. We don't
Mhm.
celebrate rest. We don't support these moments. If anything, there's a lot of attempt to move things very quickly. I don't know if you've ever had this experience. I've observed it and I've been party to it, but you attend a wedding and people say, when are you going to have kids? Someone has a baby and they say, when are you going to have another? And then, it gets to the point where maybe I've had a friend who had 3 kids and they said, oh, are you going to have another? And there's this space of just saying there is so much of this assumptive thinking about
Mhm.
when, how, why, all of these things
Right.
move forward in our lives that, yes, giving this time and space to really consider what our choices are. I mean, I
Mhm.
believe there is such beauty in this power of choice because our freedom to choose is our greatest gift. And I know that it's possible that there could be some people listening going, wow, this is all well and good, but I am in a season of my life where things are hectic, things are
Mm.
crazy. I can't stop. I
Mm.
can't. And I see you and I hear you, right? There is this space of recognizing that we all don't have the luxury of just stopping and resting at any given moment. But if it's any consolation, these littlest moments of pause remind us that if nothing else, we breathe ourselves to the next
Right. Absolutely.
moment on moment. And that's not something we have to do. So it becomes this beautiful space of saying, what if you didn't have to move everything forward and you could let yourself just ride the waves of
Mm.
being
Mhm.
moved by this natural in and out that happens at a regular metered pace that, thank heavens, we don't have to do anything for.
Right.
We don't owe anybody anything to be able to take a breath in and out. And if that's all you can afford to do in any given moment, it will open up and unlock the next step for you. And that is such an amazing thing to explore. So, whatever level and phase and stage you are in with this concept, this kind of journey you're on, is the littlest step is still a step in the right direction. And I think that's something we don't celebrate with each other quite enough.
Right. I love that. And you're right. I mean, breathing does not take any extra time than what you're already using it for. But the mindfulness of lengthening that inhale with maybe your eyes shut and then lengthening that exhale, it's so grounding. Whenever I do that in a way that makes me feel like I have seriously hit the pause button and all I did was breathe, which I was already doing, like that is such a wake up call for me. And back to what you were mentioning about asking the next question and the next question based on, life events. And I feel like they desire to make conversation, they desire to have information. And it's so funny that we fall into these patterns of questions. When you meet a kid, you ask them, how was school or how was your summer? You ask them how old they are. You ask them if they like school. Are you involved in sports? It's like there's this list of acceptable rehearsed questions. And when you meet a new person, an adult, you're asked like, oh, what do you do? Do you have kids? Are you married? You're scanning for jewelry, you're scanning for
Mhm.
accessories that are hanging out of their handbag to see what clues there are. And one thing that I love so much about this podcast, two things I love about this podcast.
That's it?
One,
No.
I know, two things that I'm gonna like, if I keep counting. I love everything about this podcast. I truly do. But I love that when I meet somebody, I now have this assumption that I have a whole hour of their time with no distractions, which is confusing for me when I meet somebody at a cocktail party because I have to shift out of that. But the other thing is this question that I've been asking, how are you saying yes to yourself in this season? That has become my first question whenever I meet a new person, instead of asking them where they live or what they do, or, why are you in France and you're speaking English, like all of these things. And I find out so much more beautiful information, and I gather such great insight. And because it's not a rehearsed question, the answer, you have to pause before you answer that question when you're just in regular conversation. And I love everything about that.
Both you, the person asking, and the person answering gets to be surprised. And I
Yes.
love that. I think there's this element of surprise that's really, really important to keep in our fold as we engage with the world. And the truth is people are craving connection.
Mhm.
People crave connection more than anything. We are meant to be interconnected. We are not meant to live isolated lives.
Mm.
And this idea that we are separate from each other, from nature, from the world around us is really sort of one of the biggest lies that gets perpetuated, is that we are not
Yes.
all inherently interconnected. And I think there's this interesting trepidation that sometimes people experience in these social situations, and it's a little bit of who's going to go first, right?
Hmm.
Who's going to allow the space first, who's going to open up that possibility. And there's this interesting space of vulnerability, right?
Yeah.
Because you're revealing something to someone about yourself that might be personal, or it just might be something you've never actually said out loud. And I think saying the words brings life to them in a different way. Even if you think something, actually saying it brings it to life in a very different
Hmm.
way. And I always joke with people, because so often I work with people who will say, but it's so scary. That moment really is fearful for me, to be vulnerable with someone, to exhibit these qualities of reaching out or stepping forward when I don't know what's ahead. And yes, is totally my answer. Yes. And in the end, it's a very brief moment that leads you
Right.
to a whole, it's like you stepped through this very little dark space into this clearing that all of a sudden becomes so open and so available and so full of possibility
Yes.
that often it's worth that little moment of discomfort to step through. And I think that's a
Absolutely.
really important thing to remember, is that often the whole conversation you have with someone is not the uncomfortable part. It's that first asking. It's that
Right.
first attempt to step across the threshold. And in the grand scheme of things, it's a very small moment.
It's true. And remembering that they feel the same way.
Yes.
We're all have this soundtrack going on. And maybe someone would say, oh, for you and I, we don't have that. It's just because we're exercising this muscle all the time. So now it's like,
Absolutely.
ooh, conversation, bring it. Like, I'm so ready. I don't know you, I don't know you, I don't know you, you could be anybody. And I would love if we started answering these questions like from our future self, instead of like,
Mm.
oh, I was born here. I was like, I'm 56 years old. You don't want you don't want a recap. You want to know where I'm going, who I am now. Because if I even start telling you all of that past to kind of catch you up to where I am now, that's going to drag me down because I'm going places and I'm not that same woman. And I'm really excited about what's next. So that's why I like these questions, because they have intention and they speak to what's coming. And it
Mhm.
doesn't matter to me where you've been. I already love you. We're having a conversation. It's so good.
Ah, that's so great. And yes, I agree with you. It's easy to think when you observe other people doing it that they have something you don't. That
Right.
they know something special, or they've developed this, they've acquired this special skill. But it's really just this willingness. And really, I say willingness because one does have to be willing to give up control. If you are
Mm,
trying to get something out of that conversation, something very specific for yourself out of that
mm,
conversation, yes, it may desire to stay in a very narrow space, but
mm,
if we are willing to give that up, I've been playing around with this term of radical surrender, right? Which is
mm.
not letting go. It's
Right.
not just sort of giving it up. That's
Yeah.
not what radical surrender is. Radical surrender is saying, when I let go, what becomes possible?
Mm,
And it opens up a space for us to grab hold of whatever pulls us at that
mm,
kind of deep internal level. And it's very different than this idea of you just have to give everything up, right?
right.
There's really different qualities.
Absolutely. I find that it's not a giving up, it's a giving over.
Mhm,
Or
mhm.
I'm just giving up my resistance to the thing that I want. And
And
then I
yes,
can focus.
absolutely. It doesn't mean giving up, but it does mean tuning in more, right?
Absolutely.
And that's really something that I think is important to remember, is to be true to ourselves. We have to be in
Mhm.
touch with ourselves.
Yes. And unattached to the outcome. Like how, for example, I desire property in France. I love that I've identified the property. That's great.
Mhm.
How I get from where I am now to where I want to be, I am so unattached.
Mhm.
Is it money I generate myself? Is it a group of fabulous female investors? Is it a mix of that? Is it something I don't even know about yet? It doesn't matter to me. It's my job is to have the desire, have the vision, and pay attention to what the next logical step is and how I'm being guided and how to get there.
When we say yes, the universe absolutely conspires to make it happen. And there is an amazing piece that opens up for me too. Just hearing you say that is, we sometimes can get really obsessed with the right way something's going to happen, or
Mhm.
the way we've decided something's going to happen, and it really does close off the possibility of something even better happening
Oh,
in
every
in
time.
its wake every
Yeah.
single time.
Yeah.
Or the fact that if the path curves a little bit, which, newsflash, it's
Mhm.
never straight, it's
Yeah.
never a linear path, but the more the path curves, somehow the worse that is. But in reality, who knows what we'll pick up along the way?
Oh my
And
gosh,
that's part
yes.
of what it is. It's the journey, as you know.
Yes.
And I think
Yes.
that's what's so beautiful about allowing life to move us. And that's really what it
Yes.
is allowing ourselves to be moved. That's really, for me, the key to gracefully navigating change on a broad scale, because we don't stop changing at any point. We're
Right.
constantly emerging as the next versions of ourselves that are going to show up in the world and offer other people around us, whether it's one person or a group of people or a huge audience of people, the next version of our gifts. And that's really what it
Right.
is. And we take that and then we decide what we want to do with it next. There's always a next. The idea that there is a start and there is a finish, there is a here and that there's a there. Let's just blow that open and just say,
Yes.
it's just, I'm moving. I'm moving now.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. And yes, the path is not linear. Did I mention the 24 Mother's Days?
Yeah.
And if I had an idea of what that was going to look like, and it never looked like Amelia Jade. And anybody who knows me knows her and knows that she is the exact human that I am supposed to parent, and that I'm supposed to be 56 years old when she's 10.
Mhm.
And it's all happening for us. You mentioned this stunning phrase, and you kept going, but I would love to come back to it. And that is gracefully navigating change. Can
Mhm.
you say more about that, please?
Absolutely. I think there is a misconception about the concept of change that if it isn't hard, it isn't real. And if it
Mm.
isn't a lot of work, we're not going to get a certain result.
Mm.
And I think change is one of the core relationships for us all. We need to really get to know. It's
Yes.
sort of an interesting concept to say, what if change showed up in front of you as a person? What would it look like? How would you feel? And I mean that truthfully. Some people say, oh gosh, because the truth is most people would say, oh God, not again. You again? I just dealt with you. Can you just give me a break? And there's an element of saying, really, what is that? Why are we so fearful? Why are we so resistant? And if we can learn to invest space in this relationship like it was a friend, dare I say, change was our friend, and we could use it as a partner in co-creating the next version of our lives. How much more graceful and fun could that be? But it does take knowing ourselves. And so I think there isn't shortcutting this understanding of what it really means to be open and available to change. Now, I do believe that there are moments when we say, I'm not ready for that yet. I hear the knock.
Mhm.
I see that, but not quite yet, because let me sit with this for a little bit. Let me consider how I really want this to look, what iteration. And that's great. That's
Right.
perfect.
It's intention.
It's intention. But if we have such resistance to our
Yeah.
relationship with change, it is always going to feel hard and difficult and glitchy, right? It'll feel
Mhm.
creaky, right? Like every time we take a step, ooh, I don't know if I liked that. So the question for me is always, how do we move this into a space where we feel like we can allow it to be happening at some
Yeah.
level at all times? So it isn't something that comes in and disrupts us as much as an
Right.
invitation that arrives to help usher us on to the next step.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And I think that as we were speaking earlier about this pause and even just being mindful of our breath, those are the practices that help us navigate larger change because it's presence and intention coupled with inspired action. And that will help us with whatever each day brings us. And then approaching those days with curiosity rather than with routine or this is just how we do it so that when a change comes it actually knocks us off, where if we are practicing presence and looking with curiosity and discovery and possibility into each day, change is just a part of everything. It's already happening. It's always happening. It's just when we're ignoring it, it takes us by surprise. And that's where I think it can get a little tricky of sometimes I'll speak for myself. In the past, I have called avoidance
Mhm.
intention.
Mhm.
And I just spun it, was like, I'm just waiting for the right time. And no, I'm totally avoiding what I know is needs to happen. Sometimes that requires a courageous conversation. Sometimes it requires personal courage and saying the thing that, we talked about earlier. Thoughts grow as they are shared. So sometimes I don't want to say what my dream is because I don't want you to crush it. But that's not ever what happens.
Yes, you're speaking so much to this concept of being aware of what barriers are in your life, your space
Mhm.
that make it more challenging. And I want to be very open about this. These are not all our fault. This is
Right.
not you're a terrible person because you have all these barriers and walls up toward change. No, we are wired. We are wired to keep the status quo. That is how our systems work. It's biological, like our most primitive brain functions
Mm-hmm.
are wired to track for safety and threat. And
Yes.
in a situation of threat, we revert back to our habits to keep us
Mm-hmm.
safe.
Right.
And it is a very, very natural thing. It is not that you're doing something wrong if this is happening to you, but it is important to understand. Sometimes we need to look at that situation and say, is this really a threat? Or does my system just not know the difference? Because it is scary to be visible if you haven't before. It is
Mm-hmm.
difficult to have a conversation you haven't had before. We're also wired for negative bias because, again,
Mm-hmm.
our system is tracking for threats at all
Yes.
times. Even if we think we've evolved so far beyond these basic survival brain tactics, it just simply is not true. And we're wired to find the negative things because they are threats. We're
Mm-hmm.
not wired to wire in the positive things, to celebrate, to show our systems it is possible because we've done it over and over and over again. So the more we're aware of these barriers, the more we have the ability to actually go in eyes wide open to say, oh, I see you, but this actually isn't a threat right now. This is an
Right.
opportunity. And how can we now look at this through a different lens? And, there are more barriers, of course. I'm just hitting on a couple of these
Right.
basic ones, but it is an important part of this process is it's not because you don't know what you're doing or you're not doing it right or you don't know how to do it. It's
Yes.
just a matter of saying, where can I notice more?
Mm.
Noticing what we notice in any given moment to actually give our systems opportunity to get more input so we
Yes.
can do a better job. And I hate better worse comparisons, but we can just improve our system's ability to make these decisions, right?
Yes.
Is this a safe person? Is this a threatening person? If we have gone into our lives where almost every conversation where we've gotten vulnerable, we've gotten shut down because of it, of
Sure.
course, there's going to be something to work through there. There's going to be a layer
Right.
of some past wounding, as I
Yes.
mentioned. But as I said earlier, that wounding may not be our fault. It isn't our fault if we were not ever given the space to really show up authentically and in a way that supports our vulnerability and growth. But when we go back to that layer of healing being our responsibility, it's empowering to say, I don't want to perpetuate that pattern anymore. And what do I do now? What choices can I make to allow myself to step forward, trying something new? And one of the biggest and often I think most forgotten aspects of this is to replant it as what I call a proof loop. Like give our
Mm.
systems proof that it's
Yes.
possible, that we've done it before, so that when we hit another one of these instances in our life, our system doesn't go, alert, alert, threat, threat. This is the first time we've done this and we're really scared. You can say, oh, no, 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 no. We've done this before. Remember that
Right.
time that I did this? Let's celebrate that. And then let's use that to say, oh, this is something I've done before. I can totally do this.
Right. And we can speak to ourselves just like we would comfort a child
Yes.
because that's all that we're doing. And
Yes.
we not acknowledging those negative feelings actually makes us a slave to them instead of
Oh,
saying, I see
100%.
you. I know you're afraid. I've got this. We're
Mhm,
okay. We're grown-ups now. We
mhm.
can do hard things. This is the right kind of hard. So I'm loving all of this. And of course, I would say, oh my gosh, you should write a book. But you did.
But I did.
Yay. I'm so happy because I need more of you. So tell us about the book. Tell us who it's for. What do you want us to know?
Thank you. So the book I wrote is called Embracing the Unknown,
Mm.
Exploring the Pathways to Change. And as you can probably hear through this conversation, when I started writing, I was just convinced I was going to come up with the quintessential book on change and, change in 5 easy steps, how to do this process. And as I started writing, I just thought, oh no. Number one, I can't tell anyone how to change or what to change. And that became very, very clear to me very early on. But I think I can help people ask the right questions, which is part of the reason
Mm.
I love what you're doing here and how you approach this conversation. And I have a feeling many conversations you have,
Yes.
because I think that's really what's needed. It shocked me how much research there is on organizational and business change. Tons of research. They've studied it. There's models. There's all of these things to fall back on, and almost no research on personal change.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
guessing because it's very individual and it's hard to study, over time. And also it happens at so many different levels. It would be very difficult to kind of tailor down some sort of actual research. But there is so much research about all of the aspects of change
Mm,
that I thought, this is what I don't think people have gotten. I don't think people have gotten this invitational, explorative support to say, what does it mean to change? Why bother changing? What are the skills, tools, and resources that we can really strengthen? Again, I don't think they're outside
yes.
us. I think they're already
Right.
inside us. And then what does it mean to change forever? And I don't mean that in a kitschy way. I really mean, what does it mean to have a lifestyle that is
Yes.
sustainably in this concept of I am constantly changing,
Right.
growing, and evolving.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the arc that the book takes, is to walk with people. And it's a combination of stories from my own life and my experiences, beautiful people that I've interviewed and got the chance to talk to about their stories, a ton of research, and just some really different ideas about the ways we can incorporate this relationship with change in our life in a really meaningful way. So I'm incredibly proud of it. It had a life of its own. It reached a point where I just thought, oh, you are doing your thing, girlfriend. And that was amazing. And I'm just so, so grateful. I said to myself a long time ago, and this still rings true, every single time I come across somebody who said, I read your book and I just couldn't believe when I thought this.
Mm,
It's not that they read something in my, like, it isn't always about my words. And that's really not what
right.
this is about. But if something I contributed can make other people think differently, that's when I think I've really done the work that I'm so lit up by doing.
Oh
So
my
that's
gosh.
where we are. That's what it is. And I would love for anybody who's interested to grab a copy. I'd love, actually, Wendy, to give your listeners a 99-cent copy of my ebook. We can set up a little promo
Oh my
code, and
gosh, perfect.
anybody who wants to go to my website and grab an ebook for 99 cents, I would love to just give that to your listeners and just say thank you. Thank you for being willing to give yourself this gift. And it really is a gift, this ability to introspectively question and dig into these deep, sometimes uncomfortable, I'm not going to lie, but important questions, because it ultimately helps us grow. And I think that's what the goal really is.
Right. Oh my gosh, I love all of this. Of course, I could talk to you all day long, and I intend to at some point. We
Yeah,
must connect because this is,
exactly.
I have so many questions. So I won't ask any of them. However, I will thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom, for your grace, the invitational way you hold conversations and
Mm,
hold space for people. I see you in that. I appreciate you in that.
thank
I
you.
am filled with appreciation and gratitude for you. Thank
And I'd love
you.
to just end, if you don't mind.
No, of
I
course.
I had to smile. One of my favorite artists, his name is Brian Andreas, and he has a company called Story People. But there's these stories put with visuals, and I have a couple
Ooh,
prints up in my house. But one of them that I'm actually wearing, it's on a
I
leather
was going to ask you
bracelet
about
that
that.
I have. I have to read it to you because
Yes.
it's so perfect. And this morning I woke up, I thought, I know what I need to have on me today. But the quote is, say yes. Whatever it is, say yes with your whole heart. And simple as it sounds, that's all the excuse life needs to grab you by the hands and start to dance.
Oh, I'm going to cry.
So I feel like that was the
That's
perfect way
so
to just end
beautiful.
this, to say, saying yes is the thing. It is the thing that gives life the excuse it's been waiting for. And I know I have chills now too. That's
I
all
can attest to
that's
that.
all we need to know, right?
Oh my goodness,
So
I love it. Please tell
we are.
everyone where they can find and follow you, where they can get the book, all the good things.
Of course. So my website is my name, www.lisadeangelis.com. You can find copies of the book there, and also Amazon, Target, Barnes & Noble online, wherever books are sold. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, Instagram. I think you'll probably drop some of my socials in the show notes so people can have a direct to that, which is great. And as I said, we'll set up a promo code. I guess what should we do? Say yes. We'll do a say yes promo code for any of the listeners. I'll set that up on my website. And thank you in advance for listening, for sharing, and for just taking a moment for yourself. You've done something good for the world when you've done that.
I could not agree more. I love you so much. Thank you so much. This is so fun.
I know.
So fun. I cannot wait till our next conversation. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. As always, any links or notes mentioned can be found at phineaswrighthouse.com in the podcast section of our site, or in the show notes below. And if you haven't connected with me personally, come find me on Instagram at Phineas Wright House and let me know you listened to this episode. I'd love to get to know you. Thank you for sharing this time with me. I know your days are full, and I'm really grateful that you chose to spend some of your precious time right here. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any of these delightful conversations. I'll see you next week.